What's going on, duelists? It's your boy Nick, bringing you today on the channel an update to my Volcanic deck list, now featuring the new Azamina support from the recently released Rage of the Abyss core set. For those of you new to the channel, welcome. My name is Nick. We do Yu-Gi-Oh! Content mainly focused around rogue and casual decks alike. If that's the kind of Yu-Gi-Oh! That you're interested in, then I highly encourage you to subscribe to the channel. We are currently working our way to 2,000 subscribers, and I need your help to get there. So Volcanic is a deck that I've been playing for a while now, featured a few profiles and combo videos on the channel, and I was supposed to bring you guys a Volcanic versus my Earth's Arctic Ice Barrier live duel video this past weekend, which I did record that live duel, but I really wasn't happy with how the duel turned out. My opponent, who was piloting the Earth's Arctic Ice Barrier list, was just making some mistakes and some small misplays that I felt didn't give the deck a true representation of what it should have played like. And I would rather, give my opponent more time to learn the deck as opposed to give you guys a live duel that isn't very entertaining or exciting to watch. So, I do apologize in advance for that. I know a lot of you are looking forward to that live duel, but again, I want to prioritize quality over quantity. So I want to make sure that the live duels are up to par with what I feel the standard should be, as well as give my opponent enough time to get more familiarized with the list so there's less of a chance for minor misplays and mistakes. But in that case, to begin with, that's going to allow me to give you guys 2 additional profiles, because when we do re-record the live duel, not only is Volcanic going to be playing the new Azamina support, but I have an update for my Earth's Arctic Ice Barrier list as well, which I'll be featuring, showcasing on the channel later this week with an updated profile. So I'm going to update both deck lists, give my opponent more time to practice, and hopefully, I don't know when, just bear with me on the timing, I'm going to try to bring you guys a live duel of Volcanic versus Earth's Arctic Ice Barrier. I just wanted a little bit more time to prepare for that. So again, I do apologize if any of you were looking forward to that this weekend. I just won't be uploading it. I just felt that the duels weren't too great. So with that being said, we're going to dive headfirst into the 60-card Volcanic deck list. Again, like I mentioned, it is featuring the brand new Azamina cards from the Rage of the Abyss set. And Azamina is the 4th, I believe, archetype from the Diabellstar lore. I believe, obviously, it was Snake Eyes was the first one, Goblin Biker was the second, the third was White Forest, and the 4th is now Azamina, which are a fusion, archetype of fusion monsters. They have no main deck monsters yet. However, I do believe that changes post Supreme Darkness, which is our next core set. But they are comprised of all spells in the main currently, and all of their monsters are fusions, and you basically summon them via this card here, which we'll talk about when we dive into the profile. This is effectively an archetypal, instant fusion of sorts, I guess you could call it. And it just allows you to cheat out these fusion monsters that have some really neat effects. So with that being said, like I said, I decided to update the deck list. Like I said, it is still 60 cards, but I do believe that the Azamina package provides Volcanic with not only some much needed negation, but also the ability to have access into the Diabellstar package even more consistently. And I'll talk more about that as we get to the profile. So you know how we do things here on the channel. Lead off with the monsters first. 2 copies of the Electro Blaster. This card is an amazing extender. If you normal or special summon a fire monster, Electro Blaster is able to summon itself from the hand, as well as Foolish Burial, a level 8 pyro monster, from your deck to the graveyard for free. It's all one effect. Because this is a trigger effect, you can use it to chain block some of your fires that trigger when normal or specialed, which is pretty cool. And as a 2-of, it's perfectly fine. Also, its typing being machine is relevant for the FTK, which this deck can still produce, and is even arguably more consistent, as well as more resilient with the Azamina package, because now we can establish a negate to protect ourselves from anybody trying to disrupt said FTK, which is crazy. So 2 Electro Blasters, more than enough. I don't think 3 is necessary, especially since the only target you have to dump is Emperor currently. Moving on, though, we have a playset of Volcanic Trooper. This is the Volcanic's main starter. On normal or special, searches a Volcanic card from deck to hand, and has an additional effect allowing you to discard a card to produce a bomb token to the opponent's field. Very powerful effect. A lot of people sleep on that effect. Not only does it provide a body on their field, locking them out of cards like Impermanence and the Mulch Armies, because they now control a card, but they also cannot use cards like Lightning Storm or Evenly, assuming, you know, we leave the token on their board and they're going second. So pretty cool effect there. And then obviously if the token is destroyed, its controller takes 500 damage. So very cool card, max out at 3. Obviously an amazing starter. We are still on the Scattershot package in the main deck. Again, this is a 60 card list, and I just don't think you're playing Volcanics unless you're playing Scattershot. I'm well aware that this card can sometimes be bricky or hurt consistency, but I think that those issues are negligible due to the fact that this card, if you resolve it, which you do resolve it a lot of the time, it's a full board wipe, or I'm sorry, more of a Raigeki. It's not a full field wipe, but it destroys all their monsters and burns them for a total of 1,500 damage. It's an amazing effect, and I just love main decking this card. Like I said, do you need to play it? No. If you cut it, you could probably sub it for non-engine, but personally, I just feel like you're not truly invoking the spirit of Axel Brody, you know, from the anime, unless you're also playing Scattershots in your Volcanic list. It's just too fun not to play. So I'm on 3 copies of that. Up next, we do have a playset of Volcanic Shell. You know, had to bust out the QCRs. I think Shell is incredible. It basically makes a lot of the costs that you would pay in this deck free, especially for the new Azamina package, which requires you to tribute a monster. If you tribute the Shell, you basically go Shell to add another copy of Shell, and there, you know, the minus that you took is just basically refunded without you going out of your way. So it's really crazy. Max out on Shells. Not only does it, like I said, it helps pay for the cards that have a lot of costs in this deck, you know, that require like pitches, like Diabel, cards like Mseti, which we'll get through as we get through the profile, but amazing card in my honest opinion. And then again, the ability for it to search copies of itself on a non-once per turn effect is just crazy. So always play 3 Shell in any Volcanic list you run. Then we are on 2 copies of Rimfire. 2 copies is enough. I don't think maxing out at 3 is necessary. The card can get bricky at times. 2 is perfect though. You send it to grave by any means, and when it does hit the graveyard, it's either a Foolish for another Volcanic, or it allows you to place your Blaze Accelerator's continuous spells and traps onto the field directly from the deck. So very powerful card there. Then we just have 1 copy of Rocket, which can be a pseudo starter for you. Rocket on summon, whether it's normal, special, or flipped, allows you to add a Blaze Accelerator card from your deck or grave to your hand. Very unassuming. Play this card as a one-of. It's not necessary in some builds, but again, this is a 60 card deck, so we have the space. I play it as a one-of, and it's perfectly fine. And then we obviously have 2 copies of the Volcanic Emperor, which is the boss monster, the main deck boss for the theme. Insanely powerful card, pretty much a retrain of Doomfire, but Emperor is just so much better. Not only does it have a better summoning condition, it also just has a better effect while it's on the field, you know, burning your opponent when it's summoned, as well as allowing you to set volcanic traps from your deck to your side of the field, and burns your opponent for 500 damage each time they special summon on a non-activated effect. This card is a total house. I play 2 of it just because you usually want just 1 in the deck, you know, to make your plays with, and then sometimes having the additional copy for follow-up is needed, especially if you're playing into lots of disruption. You know, if your opponent is able to like banish this card or something like that, you really, you know, want to have the second copy to continue applying pressure to your opponent. And since they're not once per turn for their burn effects, if you stack them, you know, together on the field, your opponent will take 1,000 for each summon because it's 500 off of each Emperor, which is just nuts. So 2 copies of Emperor I feel is fine. Again, it's a 60 card deck, so we have the space. If you're playing more of a 40 card list, then I think playing 1 Emperor is fine. A bit risky, but fine. Moving on, we are on 3 copies of Diabellstar the Black Witch. She needs no introduction. She's just insane. Not only bridging into your Snake Eye engine, but also granting you access into original Sinful Spoils, as well as the new Azamina stuff, which we'll talk about when we get to the spells. But remember that original Sinful Spoils not only searches for just Snake Eyes, it's any level 1 fire. So you can even use Diabell to bridge into your Volcanics by getting cards like Rimfire and or Shell out of the deck. So very powerful there, an amazing extender / starter. And now with the Azamina stuff, she's even more threatening now than she ever was before, because with the new Azamina cards, the Diabell is able to grant you access into the Omni Negate, which is very important. Up next, we do play a small Snake Eye package in the deck, just to have increased consistency, as well as the ability to tutor into this engine when we need to, just to push out additional bodies, or just to have a grind game or follow-up in case the Volcanic part of the deck or the FTK fails to do what it needs to do. So we're on one-ofs of pretty much all the names. We are on one ash, one poplar, one oak. We're also playing the birch. The reason for that, and then one flamberge. Circling back to birch really quickly is we just play it as an additional extender because sometimes you hard open the poplar. Even in a 60, I can count. There's been so many instances where I've hard opened poplar, and it's very annoying. Obviously, when that happens, so I wanted a secondary pyro that I could search with like cards like Bonfire that would actually give me like a way to extend in the event that I did open poplar. Because for the most part, most of your Bonfire targets that you could be searching are just normal summons. But if you needed a Bonfire to search an extender, and you've either already had the poplar in hand or you've already burned the poplar, then having birch in the deck as a secondary target I feel is great. And also hard opening birch isn't even that bad because again, it is just a free extender as long as you control a fire. But basically this is the Snake Eye package we run. They're all one-ofs. I don't want to hear anybody say this is a Snake Eye deck. I mean, it's volcanic through and through. Trust me on that. You definitely have volcanic cards on the board almost every single turn. And these are just in here again for increased consistency as well as recycling capabilities and just overall a grind game for the deck. So those are the Snake Eyes, obviously. Very powerful package still, even with Ash and Poplar still limited to one. Up next is a Horus package, 3 Imseti, 1 Happy. Really, these are just in here not only for a amazing discard outlet for your cards like Rimfire, Emperor, or Shell, but they also give you free bodies on field to make rank 8 plays with, which can help push through disruption. And Imseti being a spellcaster helps you push into a greater Inari Fire setup. If we summon this from deck, we can burn our opponent. A really cheeky play. So 3 Imseti, 1 Happy is the ratio, and then obviously, like I said, we're on the 1 greater Inari Fire in the main deck. Very cool pyro target. So that wraps up the monsters. Now we're moving into the spells, of which we're on 3 Bonfire. Pretty self-explanatory there. You just max out on that. It's a ROTA for pyros. Then we're on 3 copies of Fire Rejection, another really underrated card in my opinion. It's a generic Foolish for any pyro monster, but if you send a Volcanic off of this card specifically, you have one of 2 options. You can either burn your opponent for 100 damage times that pyro monster's level, or you can produce a bomb token to their field, the same token that Trooper produces. And this card, the fact that it's able to produce that token on their board, again, locks them out of cards like Imperm, locks them out of cards like the Mulch Armies if they didn't already use them, because again, you're putting a card on their field, which is huge. As well as, just getting a Foolish Burial for any pyro, which is nuts. Then, obviously, we're on the 3 copies of Wanted. Pretty straightforward. You just, have it to search out the Diabell. And brand new to the deck is 2 copies of Deception of the Sinful Spoils. This is part of the Azamina package. This card is a Sinful Spoil spell, which means that Diabell Star herself can set it from the deck. And it's a continuous spell, so, obviously once you set it, it can be activated that turn. When I bought this card, the reason why I'm playing 2 of it and not maxing out, when I purchased the card, I could only afford 2 of it at the time. Because the card was, and I think it still is a bit pricey. If I believe it's between like $50 and $60 on TCG Player. Last I checked, I could be wrong. Don't quote me on that. But when I bought this card, I just didn't have the money for the 3rd one. But to be fair, I don't really know if you need the 3rd one. We already have very consistent access into this card because obviously we can hard draw it. But we can search this off of Diabell, which we're already maxing out on at 3. And we are also maxing out on Wanteds, which is also still at 3. So we still have 6 other ways, aside from hard opening this card, to get access to it, which I feel is consistent enough, even in a 60-card deck like this one. Plus, not to mention, sometimes I don't think you want to hard open this, because this card does require you to tribute a monster in order for you to use its effect. And like hard opening this card in a handful of spells means that this card becomes a brick. It's also a hard once. So I personally, even if I could afford the 3rd one, I don't really know if I'd play it. And in testing, I feel like the 2 of ratio has been perfectly fine, especially once you exhaust your Azamina package. There's not really much of a need to play additional copies of this card. Especially if your opponent's like bestioling your Azaminas out of the grave, for example, while they're in there. It cuts off like the follow-up plays that having additional copies of this would provide anyway. So I think at 2 of, the card's perfectly fine. Basically what you do is you tribute a monster from hand or field to add an Azamina card from the deck to your hand. Then if a monster is sent to your opponent's graveyard and you control an Azamina monster, except during the damage step, you can make your opponent lose 1,500 life points, and if you do, you gain 1,500. So because, again, this is a burn deck, Volcanics love burning, this card has a way to burn the opponent. Again, not a consistent way, but just as an option. It's really crazy. And then if this card is in the graveyard because it was sent there from the spell trap zone this turn, while face up, you can set it. And then this is another reason why I feel like maxing out on this card just isn't necessary, because this card literally recycles itself. You know, and then you just have a copy on your board already as soon as you get to your turn 3, assuming your opponent didn't out it. So again, you know, I just feel like playing 2 of this card is perfectly fine. I don't think 3 is mandatory. Obviously, if you want to maximize consistency, you'd play 3 of it, but I don't think it's required. And like I said, in testing, the 2 of has been working perfectly fine for me. So this is obviously a really strong card, brand new out of Rage of the Abyss. Then we're on 2 copies of Volcanic Blaze Accelerator, down from the 3 of that we used to run it at. Again, this card isn't really a starter unless you're going second. Because if you're going first and you have no way to give them a bomb token, you're not able to use the secondary effect of this card to pop a monster in Foolish Burial, which again diminishes this card's value. So I think as a 2 of, it's fine. It's super searchable through cards like Trooper as well as cards like Rocket, and you can also place it onto your field from the deck via Rimfire's Grave effect. So I feel like playing this card at 2 is perfectly fine, still very strong, and you still have plenty of access to it if need be. Then we're on 2 copies of King Sarcophagus. If you wanted to play the 3rd Deception, King Sark would be the card I would cut, and I would just play 1 of it, as opposed to the 2 of. But having 2 King Sark is actually pretty nice, because again, it just gives the deck a really insane follow-up. Like if you go down your Horus package through King Sark and your opponent outs the card, then you have really no way to get your Horus monsters out of the graveyard, like Himseti and Happy, to like either push for additional damage or just put board presence out. So I felt like having the King Sark, a 2nd copy, does come up every once in a while, and this is why I bumped the card back up to 2. But again, if you wanted to play 3 Deception of the Sinful Spoils, you could cut the King Sark from 2 to 1, and that creates the 3rd slot needed for Deception, but again, it's more of a preference thing at that point. Up next, 2 copies of Fire Recovery, just a really insane spell. Again, a really good discard target, and just the fact that it allows you to recover fire monsters from banished to grave and give you a draw is just really nice. Then we're on the 1 original Blaze Accelerator. You just have to play this as a 1-off target for your Volcanic Blazes. Not much else to say there. It's usually a brick. Sometimes hard drawing it going second is actually kind of cute, but for the most part, you just need 1 of that. 1 copy of the Divine Temple of the Snake Eye, their field spell, followed by 1 copy of the original Sinful Spoils Snake Eye, and 1 copy of the brand new Hallowed Azamina. This is the card that you're searching off of Deception. This card is effectively like an instant fusion, allowing you to reveal an Azamina fusion in your extra deck, and for every 4 levels it has, you round down. You send 1 Sinful Spoils card from your hand and or field to the graveyard, and then you special summon that monster, and it's treated as a fusion summon. So basically, you're fusion summoning using Sinful Spoils spells and traps, which is obviously really insane. And if that wasn't crazy enough, this card can, if it's in the graveyard, you can target an Azamina monster you control or that's in your grave, shuffle that Azamina into the deck, and if you do, you add this card back to your hand. And the effect to let you fusion summon is not once per turn. It is absolutely crazy. So you add it back to hand, and you can actually, as long as you have another Sinful Spoils card to send, you can activate it again and fusion summon a 2nd time. Very powerful. All you need is 1. You're just searching it off of Deception. And then, like I said, it just gets you access into your Azamina engine, which is huge. Really insane spell card. I wonder if it'll see some time on the ban list eventually, but who knows. Up next, just some non-engine for the deck. As you've noticed so far, we're not playing any hand traps. I just don't think it's needed for this deck. This deck is perfectly fine at going second and just breaking your board with just engine. But the non-engine that we are playing is just Droplet, again, an amazing breaker. And it's not bad if drawn going first. Obviously, you just set it and then use it on the opponent's turn. And then we're also on Double Thrust and 1 Talents. Again, for our non-engine of choice in the main deck. The thrust in this deck is actually crazy because if you're able to give your opponent a bomb token via Trooper's effect or via the fire ejection, they control a monster now, which means thrust, instead of setting the card, allows you to add it to hand. So just something to keep in mind. Very kind of a cool interaction there. That rounds out the spells. Now we're diving into the traps, of which you just play 3. 1 copy of Blaze Accelerator Reload. 1 Volcanic Emission, which is the target, the trap target you're setting off of Emperor, and then 1 copy of the Spiritual Fire Arcurani. Again, you're grabbing this off the Greater Inari Fire's graveyard effect, and then just helps just facilitate with the FTK and whatnot. But that wraps up the 60 card main deck. Now we're going to be diving headfirst into the extra deck, of which we are playing both of the new Azamina fusions from the new core set, Rage of the Abyss. Ilia Sylvia. Again, you're never summoning these cards with the listed material. You're just cheating them out with Hollowed Azamina's effect. But the Ilia Sylvia is basically an Omni-Negate. By attributing itself for cost, you can negate any card or effect that your opponent would activate, which is obviously really insane. It also has a graveyard effect if it's destroyed. It allows you to search for a Sinful Spoils trap, but we're not playing that, so that effect rarely comes up. It also allows you, while it's on the field, your other Azamina monsters, they inflict double damage. But again, more of a niche effect as well. The most relevant part of this card is the fact that it's an Omni-Negate, which is crazy. And then the Murcielago, which is actually bat in Spanish, Murcielago. This one, it debuffs all of your opponent's monsters while it's on the field. Again, not relevant though for the most part. What it does do is when it's fusion summoned, it allows you to add an Azamina or Sinful Spoils card from the deck to your hand. So obviously really strong there, not only giving you an additional way to search for cards like Wanted or OSS, but if it's destroyed by battle or card effect, it does allow you to search for a Sinful Spoils spell, which can be more relevant. Because that just, again, gives you access either into your Wanted or your OSS, which is pretty crazy. So, just one of each of the fusions. Again, you can recycle them with the Azamina. The Azamina package itself recycles these cards for you, so you don't need to play any more than one of for those. Obviously, we're still on the Blaze Phoenix again for the FTK. And then the only rank 8 we play that we can make with our Horus lineup is the Zombie Vampire. Again, really crazy extender. The mills in this deck are just nuts. You know, there's a lot of the Volcanics that would prefer to be in the graveyard. So playing the Zombie Vamp is obviously really strong. And then the rest of it is just your typical Link monster lineup. We play 1 Relinquished Anima, 1 IP Masquerena, a Barricade Borg, and a Proxy F Magician for the Blaze Phoenix FTK. 1 a copy of SP Little Knight, which is confirmed to be reprinted in the Quarter Century Bonanza set. So SP Little Knight will finally, hopefully, be cheap and affordable for anybody to enjoy. So great news there. 1 copy of Hida, 1 copy of Nightmare Phoenix, 1 Promethean Princess, followed by 1 World Sea Dragon Zelantis, 1 Ambler Whale, and the 1 Salamangreat Raging Phoenix, again for the OTK line. In case you can't FTK your opponent, you can make damn sure that you OTK them. And that wraps up the 15 card extra deck. Now, really quickly, before we wrap things up, let's go over the side deck really quick. Again, side deck's always up to personal preference, but for this side, I am choosing to play 3 copies of Ghost Mourner in the side. Again, I know it's not the most relevant hand trap this format, but it is still pretty good into most matchups, and the main reason why I'm playing it is because any monster that you hit Mourner with, if it leaves the field, the opponent takes damage equal to that monster's attack. Again, remember, this is a burn deck. Any amount of damage is always good damage, and the fact that Mourner is not only a disruption, but also an additional way to burn your opponent makes it worth playing, in my opinion, in the side. We're also on a Rescue Ace package in the side. Very interesting tech choice here. So we're on 3 Impulse and 1 Fire Attacker. Logic behind this is if the opponent uses an effect, we can Impulse into Attacker, give ourselves a draw 2 and a discard, which again, there's tons of great discard outlets in this deck. Really amazing there, but it's also a machine, so you can actually use this to help you make the Blaze Phoenix, since Blaze Phoenix does need a machine and a Pyro as fusion material. So pretty cool package there. Obviously, they're all fires as well, so they just have really good synergy with the deck. Then we're on 3 copies of Twin Twister. This could be Cosmic Cyclone, but again, this deck has tons of good discard cards that want to be pitched. So I feel like Twisters is better. Plus, you know, you get to out 2 cards instead of just 1. So I don't think it's too bad. Then we're on the 1 copy of Sinful Spoils of Subversion. Again, great for going second and breaking boards. Then we're also on a playset of Gravedigger's Trap Hole if we know we're going first. Again, crazy card and just an additional way to burn. And then to wrap up the last card we side deck is 1 Blaze Accelerator Reload. We actually side into the second copy when we know we're going second, believe it or not. Because if we can discard this off any of our effects that allow us to pitch, we can immediately scattershot our opponent's board going second. which is crazy. So that's going to wrap up my updated Volcanic Azamina deck list for the post Rage of the Abyss format. Let me know down in the comments below what you duelists thought of the deck list. Like, subscribe if you're not already. And like I said, this will be the updated Volcanic list I'll be bringing to the live duel once I get it re-recorded. You know, just give me some time for me to get together with my friend, and we'll try to give you guys a really good live duel. And like I said, I'll also have an update for Earth's Arctic Ice Barrier as well. Expect an updated deck list for that sometime later this week. But with that being said, this is Nick hitting that end phase. Peace. Oh, also one last thing. If you duelists want to see updated combos and test hands with this deck, let me know down in the comments below. Again, I have no problems showcasing you guys, you know, the lines and how the deck functions with the new Azamina card. So if that's also something you want to see, let me know down in the comments. Peace.